Welcome to our radio in Pinduka. My name is Jean-Jacques Bosco. Tonight we have invited for you a special guest, and this is always our tradition. And without even going far, I can go ahead and announce his name and who he is. We do have in our studio tonight Dr. Pierre Celeste Bakunda XVe-XXIe, who was born on July 7th, 1955, where in Kadehero, Ndiza, which is in Rwanda. And he, of course, schooled in French and English. He's just a Rwandan of French/English speaking. And his career was very brilliant. He taught at Don Bosco Technical School in Kicukiro, Kigali, Rwanda. Of course, now he has a PhD. He has been teaching and also conducting numerous research in humanities and social sciences. Furthermore, he taught at different universities. One is the Lille Catholic University in France, University of Marburg in Germany, University of Ghana, of course, in Africa, University of Legon in Accra. I think that was in Ghana. And then he went on and taught in different, what we call institute or high school, college, and university institutions, such as the EDHEC Business School, that was in Lille, France. He also taught at IECEG School of Management, Lille in France. And finally, he taught also at so this was France, and he taught also in the political science department on Rennes campus. That was in France. Probably I may have omitted some elements of his biography. So while we have him in our studio, I will invite him to come to the floor and just greet our audience. At the same time, he can also touch on what I mentioned as the introductory. Dr. Bakunda XVe-XXIe, welcome to our RTV in Pinduka.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Journalist GGB, Jean-Jacques Bosco. Thank you for having me here. And I'm very glad to talk to you and respond to the questions you have to ask me, and I will be ready to clarify anything. But what I can say about you said is it all is okay. But when you talk about this grand école, it's better you say EDHEC Business School, ESEG School of Management, and Sciences Po Campus de Rennes in France, right?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bakunda XVe-XXIe, for touching on that biography, and I very much appreciate it. Now, while I have you here, if there is nothing else, would you please confirm of course, today I didn't mention that we're gonna talk about your book, and I would like you to confirm to our audience the title of your book in both French and English, please.
Thank you, Jean Bosco. My book in French is Afrique, berceau de l'humanité, de l'ombre à la lumière, du 15e siècle au 21e siècle. in English, it's Africa, the cradle of humanity, from shadow to light, between the 15th and 21st centuries. Okay.
Thank you. And everybody understood, and it was clear and cut, Afrique, berceau de l'humanité. Donc, et puis les sous-titres qui viennent d'entendre. Thank you. Mr. Bakunda Ichicharo, why did you choose that title?
And this is a very, very big question, because when you choose a title like this one, that means you have been having some interrogations, in your head, and we call, in French or in English, problematic. That means you have something that is scratching your mind. And what was scratching my mind was why the African continent is still stagnant after even, 60 years of independence. Okay. And I looked around and I found out that something bad was happening. And the thing was that this continent was a victim of the greedy of Western countries that want to, loot our natural resources and continue to dominate the continent using people or leaders that are appointed by those outsiders. So I thought I could, give alert to warn, Africans to wake up and to be self-sufficient using their own forces, mind, to overcome whatever problems are, undermining the existence of the peoples of Africa.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bakunda Ichicharo, for that explanation, for the reason why you have chosen this title. And it's great because everyone just understood that your book, it's good to not only Rwandans, but also for the entire world, including other African countries, South American countries, European countries, because you are saying why Africa has been stagnant, why Africa did not move ahead comparing to other countries, comparing to other continents, comparing to the rest of the world. And you are just suggesting that it's because of the greed of the West that has been committed to loot Africa, to plunder Africa by using their what we call their invisible hands through our own African leaders. Is that a good assessment?
Yes, indeed, it is. It is.
Perfect. Now, let's go to the core of this discussion, this interview, and I will go ahead and just ask you a question that will lead our audience to grasp at least what is inside that book. Now, to stimulate some curiosities, could you please give us or give it to your potential readers a foretaste of your book, which means tell us a little bit about the content of your book. Of course, we need a snapshot. We don't want you to just tell the whole book, although you're not going to even finish it within 1 hour or just less than 1 hour. What is the book about, basically?
Thank you very much. The book is very, very big and around 737 pages. And as you are saying, we can't, describe the content in, 45 minutes. So I will, summarize and say that the book has 9 parts in which you find 25 chapters. And all chapters are linked, to the title, just to show how the continent has been victims of plots, and those plots were somewhat planned, organized by Western countries, just to to subject Africans so that they cannot grow in in development and be strong, so that they can face the global competition, and Africa could really be at the top like others are doing. Taking the example of the Asian dragons, how they are emerging very strongly, and Africa is going down and down. So this was like putting the continent under the foot of colonizers. So the content is something that we can summarize as the root causes of the African poverty, and what we can call bad states. I mean, when people are sick, when people have not safe drinking water, when people are living in poorer areas without anything, and they are somewhat desperate. So I try to awake Africans to have example of other continents, and I wonder even why Africa could accept this kind of dominance from Western, which went through 3 phases, which are slave trade, colonization, and today neo-imperialism. So now I'm asking myself why Africa has inherited this kind of state where presidents of Africa are like puppets of Western countries, and they can even last more than 45 years in power. So it's a kind of it's a book where you can find everything just to make African awake, and to highlight the fact that it's nobody else from outside who will come to Africa to do things on our behalf. We have got to change our mind and try to figure out how we can survive by our own means, not all the time being assisted by these countries, which are even willing to let us go down and down again.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bakunda Ichicaro, to shed the light on at least what is in your book. You just said 737 pages. It's not a lot for people who wanted to learn how they can make their country good or better. So it's not a lot. Number two, you said there are 9 chapters, among which they are just developed in 25 yes,
No.
9 parts, just divided into 25 chapters. Am I correct?
Yes, indeed, you are.
Good. And then I believe that's myself, I'm convinced, because this is a wake-up call to every African, to all Africans. Even you just mentioned, it's a wake-up call for those leaders who cannot understand, who cannot help themselves by stopping from themselves from plundering or helping or aiding the foreign countries. Now, this book, Africa, Cradle of Humanity, From Shadow to Light, you can tell this is for everyone who wants to learn about how Africa still experiences this rampant disease you just mentioned. Like there is no really safe water in many countries, poor areas in rural, even in different cities, slums everywhere. You just nailed it. Now, you say, explain to us a little bit how Africa went from slavery, colonization to neo-imperialism. Now, don't you think, as you just said, who to blame? Don't you think maybe the blame is on the West, the blame is on Africans? You just touched on it, but elaborate more. Or it's just a combination of both those, how do you call it, traitors?
The problem is originated from Western countries, but I can state without any fear that Africans had a part to play in this matter. Why? Because when it started, Africans, those who we call patriarchal, society, the chiefs were selling, their relatives to those Arabs and whites who had to give them the gifts, and they could, sell Africans to those people. But the aim was not from Africans. It's like they were corrupt by those ones who had planned to take our people to go, to enrich their economies using manpower of our people in the plantation, or sugar or tea or something like that. But I can say that the origin of this, nobody could escape, because those white people with Arabs had, means to corrupt poor people who were our, our elders. So when you are dealing with weak people, giving them some gifts, they need, to live better. So their mind was not really open, and they could be corrupt very easily. But if we have to, to be fair and compare their responsibilities, we can say that those people who went to corrupt, our elders were more responsible than the one who were corrupt. So they had the aim to get, manpower from Africa. And if our elders could not accept it, they could even kill them, you see. So I can say that weakness of our elders is somewhat, we can say they can be pardoned.
Also, you mean contributory to that?
Yeah, I mean the responsibility are not really, equal. The responsibility, more responsible for that were those outsiders who had planned to do so. So we were victims of those greedy of Western countries who went to Africa with an aim to violate the human rights and take Africans to slavery, where they were somewhat brutalized and somewhat excluded from their, civil society. They were mistreated. They were like animals. Even animals could be treated better than Black people. That's why when you look into the history of Africa, you can find so many Africans who were somewhat, like what we call freedom fighters, who wanted Africans to be free, like Martin Luther King and so many others, or William Dubois and others who wanted Africa to be free, which puts, forward a kind of program to resettle some Africans to the country that was chosen, called Liberia, where they sent some slaves, to be in this area. And then this is the case of slavery, and came the other phase of colonialism, which was somewhat engineered by Western country too. They went to colonize Africa and to loot her natural resources using all means. They had what I can call free manpower. They had, people who were somewhat protected by those who wanted
taking all for free all the raw materials.
Yes, indeed. And then this was somewhat a calculation of those superpowers. When Roosevelt, met a certain, the name is,
you mean Franklin Roosevelt, huh?
Yeah. He met a prime minister of England. The name will come, and as Americans wanted.
That's not. It wasn't during the Churchill time, was it?
Please.
Was it the Churchill era?
Churchill, yes, it's Churchill and Roosevelt. They met. Thank you. They met, and then Roosevelt wanted the Europeans to leave Africa and to give independence to those countries. But it was not by, love. Rather, it was to tell them to leave Africa so that Americans could go too.
Of course, because remember when there was the Second World War, 1939 up to 1945, so the West suffered, and the USA, the US, United States of America, helped the Europe to win the war. So from that, they say, okay, these guys are getting rich from Africa. Why don't we go there too? So that's how that's happened, by pretending they're gonna give what you call auto determination, which means independence to different countries in order for them to go and sell their goods or get their influence. You are right.
Exactly. So you see, all this kind of situation were engineered by Western, so that they could, you know, have the same possibility to, you know, to share the cake. Africa being the cake, and Europe and America wanted to share. So in the beginning, we can also talk about, you know, this Berlin Conference of 1884, 1885, where 14 countries met under the supervision of Otto von
Bismarck. Otto von Bismarck.
Okay, so this man was just helping European countries to organize themselves so that they can, you know, exploit Africa without, you know, killing one another on the soil of, you know, other country, you know, in other continent. They could have a device to get understood each other, instead of killing each other for, you know, having this and this property in Africa. So it was a kind of fair discussion where African leaders, I mean, those chiefs, were not invited. So they decided to, you know, to balkanize the continent, you know, in Berlin, without any agreement with African leaders. So,
and now, as you just said, the consequences are this kind of what arbitrary borders, where you see countries are made together where their people are completely different. That's the case, let's say Ghana, Togo, that's Rwanda. Rwanda lost some part of it, went to either Congo. Bufumbira went to Uganda, and Karagwe, I think Karagwe was a part, but let's just stop there. Now, you also mentioned Dr. Bakunda Ichicaro, and I want, before, I mean, the show is leading almost to its end, but we are still there. I read your abstract, it means your summary. You just mentioned about the exodus of a brain. It means some African intellectuals or some African who graduate from Western universities or African universities, instead of saving their homelands, they go ahead and just stay in the West, which means Africa is losing that intellectual main power. Could you please enlighten us on that?
Yes, please. Okay, what I meant is that Africa has intellectuals who were taught,
like you live in France, you have a PhD, right? So just you can start by yourself. La charité bien ordonnée commence par soi-même. I'm convinced you are not well utilized where you are.
That is true.
But I may be wrong.
No, you are right, my friend. You are right. You know, if I were in my country, I would, you know, act for the, you know, for the benefit of my country and my people, you see. But if I am here, it's like because of what happened in my country, and which was not motivated by the will of my people. So this is like we were somewhat.
I mean, let's me get that straight. Which country were you born? Rwanda, correct? And what happened there in 1 second for you to be here and not to return to your homeland? It's not a secret.
You're asking me a question like a professor who asks, questions. He knows exactly the answer.
Yeah, maybe I'm asking for the audience who may not be aware of where is located Rwanda and what happened in Rwanda.
No, look, I wish I could, meet you for this kind of discussion, but today I can say that I'm here because of being persecuted by, a new power which was installed by those powers, I can say superpowers in my country. You see,
from the West.
From mainly, the West, yeah.
Mainly.
I'm saying that what happened was not a miracle. They were somewhat behind what happened in my country. And if you could not be on their, I mean, if you could say no to what they were planning, you were somewhat condemned to death. So many people, if you remember, in 1994, you saw people, even peasants, leaving their, homes and, fleeing to Zaire because of fear of being persecuted. You see what I mean?
I mean, they had even seen those who were killed by RPF in the zone, in the area they were controlled. So there is no secret to not mention about that.
This is true because this kind of plan of putting or planting, fear into the population so that they could leave the country or be, eliminated, it started the 1st October 1990.
No, thank you. And to me, no, that's fine. It sounds like you left your country because you could be persecuted, as you just mentioned, because your country was run by the supposed local leaders, while behind them they were the West, who just was trying to divide and rule. So thank you, but let's focus now on the exodus of the brain, the African brains moving to the West.
Okay, this is another topic, because when we talk about, the exodus of those people, we mean that when you see, what I call clientelism, when
clientelism, correct.
Yeah, when you go back home, you have your diploma, your degrees, or whatever, but you can't have, a possibility to integrate your society. You can't get a job, and if even you have a job, you will have this kind of job where you will be under the supervision of, somebody who had no degree, and who will mistreat you. That means this kind of unfairness make people angry and try to, to go out, because they have experienced freedom in West, but when they go back home, they are somewhat like prisoners. That is why
I say the prisoners of the system, they are sometimes even forced to act like those leaders, means clientelism, as you just mentioned, plundering, or corruption. Yes,
corruption. Yeah, that's why they prefer to stay, outside their countries, and it's a pity, because you have intellectuals who could be like the members of parliament, candidates, in different domains, but they know they're not welcome by the power, because the president, the presidency is somewhat under control of, illiterate people who don't want a challenge of somebody who can, show how the Africa could develop, how Africa could, make it better. So they have to fight you when you come from the airport into your home. They can even eliminate you.
Yeah. No, you just mentioned the illettrism, which means some countries in Africa are run by high school or elementary school dropout. For instance, the former Ugandan president Milton Obote, Tito Okello, even the current Rwandan president is a high school dropout. So now, I mean,
why don't you mention Idi Amin Dada, who had not even, who had not even finished the primary school?
Right. So you mean elementary school? Yes. So you see now those kind of leaders cannot sustain to see those intellectuals beside them without either killing them, forcing them to exile, or just making them like the way they are. It means the plunderism, clientelism, and so on. Now, Dr. Bakunda XVe-XXIe. Let's go to this question. We know that many people, including myself, will be interested in your book, and I told you that earlier. Is there any advanced purchase option? It means where we can buy anticipatively, we can buy ahead of time, so that once the book is out, we can get this interesting book beforehand, ahead of time.
Thank you very much for the question. You see, this is in the hands of the what do you call
publisher,
maison d'édition, publisher. But what I can say is that by July, before 15th, the book will be published, and it will be published online, and you can go to bookshop and buy it. Okay.
Good.
So I think it will be to anticipate beforehand and say and give information that I don't control at all. It's best, the publisher give me a timetable, and I think by next week I will have it, and they will precise exactly, and they will answer the question you are asking me.
Now, Dr. Bakunda XVe-XXIe, this book, African Cradle of Humanity, African Cradle of Humanity from Shadow to Light, and that's what I am reminding to our audience. The title, it's Africa Cradle of Humanity from Shadow to Light. When it's gonna come, of course, we will invite you again here to our RTV in Pinduka, so that you can tell us more about it, and of course how we're gonna try to buy it aggressively, because if it's a book that concerns about how to eradicate Africa's poverty, how to maybe advise those corrupted leaders, so there is no way people will buy it massively.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a book that I can wish to be read by young people, young Africans, adults, and intellectuals, so that they can have an idea and understand where exactly our continent was blocked to to grow big and to be self-sufficient, And this kind of book holds also good ideas of Pan-Africanism. And Pan-Africanism, let me maybe underline it, is like a way to unite Africa so that you can, use our culture and, strengthen our solidarity and help one another, to grow big using some principles, like, for instance, if we could have the same language as Nyerere and Kwame Nkrumah and their, pairs decided to, in the 1960s, to make Africa work with one language which was defined as Kiswahili, so that this could have led to the same currency, for instance, the same passports in Africa, where the barriers would have been somewhat suppressed, once for good. See what I mean?
I do understand. I even know the federation of what we call the Mali. At that time, Senegal, Mali wanted to be what we call the Sudan Français à l'époque, and they want to do a confederation with both countries. And Senghor, Leopold Sédar Senghor, betrayed Diallo Terry of Mali. So it's always African who are assigned to the West, who killed other Africans' plan, like we just mentioned, what they call the Africanists. Now, and it's too sad. It's too sad. I was told by a Chinese professor that 1970s, during 1970s, China was almost 10 times poorer than many African countries. And you just said that at the moment, China is an economic superpower. It's even lent money to the USA. Now, you also said about the Asian dragons. For people who don't remember, when we talk about Asian dragons, there are those countries, which means Japan, Singapore, Korea, and Hong Kong, who just, who just rose quickly. Now they are like the big economic engines of the world. So Africa, there is no way they can do, they cannot do better. However, they have to change. That's why your book is very important. Now, do you have any final, any final remark that you can tell to our audience before maybe we can sign off?
Okay, thank you. What I can say that I encourage all Africans, all universities, all students, all intellectuals to read the book and to understand what we call the facts that was put in place to, like, barriers to let Africa live in a kind of sad situation where Africans can't grow. And I wish those Africans should buy this book for even their kids in elementary school, because it's written very, very simply. And I'm intending to translate it. Maybe you will help me from French to English. So to me, to my point of view, the book has what I can call ingredients which can help our Africans to grow, to change their mentality, to be themselves, not to account on foreign aids. They have to be themselves. They have to be what we call freedom fighters, and inculcate the good mentality in their kids so that they can be themselves wherever they are, so that they can feel free and organize their nations accordingly. when you don't see, when you are blind, you can't, you know, give any anything that can help people to you know, to change. We have to change from A to B, C, D, and then you grow big, and then economically you are free. You are not depending on anybody else.
No, thank you, Dr. Bakunda Ikicha. You just mentioned we have to hate dependence, and this, your book, your upcoming book, Africa, Cradle of Humanity from Shadow to Light, it will be a great tool to everybody, especially those even who have young kids in schools, because as I said, your summary, when I was reading it, it's from 15th century. Means when the slavery, the slave trade was starting 15th century up to 2023. So this book, it's a good tool. And once again, thank you for coming to our RTV Impinduka English desk. And we would love to see you again once the book is out, sometime in July of this year. And good luck, Dr. Bakunda Ichicharo, on your first or maybe second book, and all the best.
The third one. The third.
Thank you.
Thank you.